Hi everyone, welcome to the second discussion of Athina Virtual. Here we are today with David Gryn and Eva Papamargariti to discuss on our future in the digital world. And should we wait for a couple of minutes until all of our attendees are in, or should we start? The time is 7:03. I think maybe we should start.
Is it recorded?
Yeah, good question.
So, hello, David and Eva. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being with us for this discussion. And it will be nice to start with the basics, to start with the introductions. So I would love to hear a few words about you two, about your professional backgrounds and how they are related to digital art. Should we start with Eva?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure. I originally studied architecture in Greece, and during these years, I became familiar with the use of digital softwares and tools. After that, I moved to London, where I did my MA at the Royal College of Art, but somehow I already knew that my intentions were directed mainly towards art, and I started practicing these tools in more depth. I create moving image work mainly, but also printed material and sculptural installations that stand on the verge of digital and physical ecosystems.
So basically, studying architecture is something that helped you get close to the software that was needed in order to become your artistic medium afterwards. Right.
Yes, exactly.
Good. And you, David?
Well, I started life as an artist once upon a time. I had various things going on. I think I got married and then wanted to work out how to earn a living. Still don't know how to do that, but I stopped being an artist because that definitely wasn't an assured living, even though I was doing pretty well at the time. And my wife still 30 years later is making art, and it's got better and better. So I'm really pleased with that decision. I don't miss it. I've always stayed working with the arts. Probably around 20 years ago, I started working with artist film in cinema. By chance, I came across a friend who owned a cinema, and he said, why don't we try something out? And I said, let's try something out, and we did, and it started working. I started working with major artists and big galleries and young artists, and trying to screen projects in cinema. And so working with artists, galleries, subsequently art fairs, and so, you know, it's sort of been my natural world for the last 20 years, how to show 35mm film, 16mm to DVD, Blu-ray, now to digital medium. So to me, it's all pretty much the same thing. It's just changed technologies, how it's played and shown, really.
Can you talk to us a bit more about the concept of data?
Data really, because it's sort of more art with data, but data. It came really from many years of working with Art Basel in Miami Beach. I was their film and video curator there for about 8 years. They came to me before that saying, could you help them? They struggled to get galleries to show video and film at the fair. So I worked very well and hard to try and make that happen. It did happen, it happened well, but it still was never an assurity of how galleries would respond. They always had to be requested because it's still not an easy business model for them selling video and digital medium. But I worked to make it possible and have done in other art fairs and other projects too. But I suppose Daata came along midway through working with Art Basel, had this feeling we had to kind of think about how do you put a best foot forward or other feet forward in nurturing a marketplace not for the sake of having a marketplace, but to take it seriously. Because what you do realize in the art world, people take it seriously when there's value with the work, with the processes, with income that can come from things. And even though that might sound disappointing to a socialist like me, it's a reality that I face all the time with the art world of how do you get people to do things with you? They usually need to be paid, they want to be paid money, or I want some. So somewhere in the mix, trying to find a process to make that happen was the thought that Daata was a way of empowering artists by commissioning them and trying to sell their work. And we started with 18 artists and moved on to, we've commissioned over like 100 plus. And then, you know, now we're working with galleries on the platform. My natural business plan, and I've always been asked, like, what is your business plan? Like I've got some big, deep business plan, is actually commissioning and paying artists. For me, that's the bit that keeps me going and makes me wake up in the morning, make me sleep less at night. But it's the mojo of any, it's actually the mojo of any business that purports to support artists. If they're not paying them, they're not doing something right. And they're doing it wrong, because you have to find a way. I can't promise to pay very much, but I try and pay something and try and find for outcomes. And I guess most galleries try that. It's when people try it on and don't respect the artist as the most important part of the chain, then I think you've got a problem.
I totally agree with you, and I think that we all should actually. And now that we're talking about the artists, I'd like to say a bit, to hear a few words about, because we're all related in this group of people, and also Eva's work belongs to the videos of Daata. So I would like to hear a few words so that our attendees know as well. How did you two meet, and how did you end up working together? Actually, maybe Eva wants to share the story with us.
I think I saw David for the first time when I was exhibiting at the New Museum. David, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's
in
correct.
2016, yes.
Under the staircase.
Under the staircase. And that was the first time we met. We talked a bit, but actually we approached each other, I think 3 years after that. Again, when I was showing with my gallery in London, and we met at the presentation, during the presentation there, and then David explained to me the whole concept behind Daata and how the commissions work and what actually is happening with the platform. Although I already knew some like basic things because I've seen Daata before at the Frieze in London, at the Frieze Art Fair, and also in Athina in New York. In 2016, I think, again. So, I mean, I knew a few things about the platform, and I knew I already liked how this model works. And for me, it was the first time that I was encountering this kind of model for creation and distribution of digital art. So I was really pleased when David approached me and he proposed to commission a new body of work that I would create specifically for the platform.
I mean, from my perspective, I remember not that long ago, we also sat next to each other at a dinner at Arbeit Gallery.
Yeah.
It seems digital always seems like remote from humans, but my work is very human. And sometimes those chance encounters means you have reason to work with people. And in a way, you and me, Stan, we've met in sort of context like through a mutual friend like Chloe Wise or someone in Miami. So I think there's kind of those moments where you trust somebody else for the reasons of just their humanity and that you get on with them. And actually the other bits come up quite easily because you already know you get on. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not looking out in life just to make friends. So it's, you know, like I've got my dog behind me. I've got my wife, I've got my kids. I like these people who you can have friendships with in the art world and they don't happen all the time. And when they do happen, you trust them. And I guess we all have a sense of trust with each other about how we want to work with each other. And collaboration is everything to me. And sort of meeting with Eva, you know, it's just suddenly, you just know you want to work together. I was actually having dinner with her, looking at her work in front of us. It was playing behind us. So I kind of knew I liked the work, but I also liked our dialogue around the work, around just conversation, and it just, you start to trust people. It's very instinctive, my work. And you know, I've sometimes make errors, you know, sometimes not everyone is easy to work with. I'm not easy always to work with, so you know, it's sort of the chemistry is happy there. And you know, but then it's also then working with an artist like Eva who delivers very well, and that is another aspect, because it's all very well liking somebody's work, getting on with them, but if they don't deliver when you need them to, that's a problem. And it's those little things. I'm a deliverer. I make sure the project happens well, always. And it's sometimes those bits where someone can keep you waiting till the last day, can kill you. So however much you love them, like them, there's a little bit that can kill you inside if you're driven to insanity. Eva's the opposite. She's really great. And you know, it's like a delight. You know, it's like any relationship, working with people, friendship. You know, you want to get the best out of everyone, and it's one of the things where I now do projects, and somebody say, who should work with you? Which artist should we work with? I always go, okay, Eva. You know, I name a few others, but it's like there aren't. You know, it's like those artists that are at the top of your head, because I know that she creates great work and is a delight to work with. I know that sounds quite lightweight, but I am very lightweight. So it's a pleasure working with Eva. And also I understand from other people who work in the art world that they value her work too. I don't work on my own. I listen to people, the gallery team at Arbeit, there's Nicoletti, there's Transfer, there's the new museum, Rhizome. There's like, I don't have to go very far to understand that there's a lot of people. There's you, you know, Athina and Stamatia. It's like, that's how my art world is. It's like, you know, it's that mix of all those comments. I'm not looking to discover new talents. I'm looking to be able to work with people to deliver projects, really.
To be honest, when we're discussing about which videos we should feature in Athina Virtual, I remember you suggested Eva was the first person. I'm like, yeah, but you know, we're Greek and she's Greek, and I'm looking for something different from you, but thank you. And then I checked the collection, the foundation, sorry, for the videos that we have from them, and Eva's work was in there. And then I checked Polyeco Contemporary Art Initiative, the other collaboration, and Eva's video was in there. So I'm like, okay, we have to have it. There's no chance.
So the most important thing to do with Eva would be that everyone who buys, and more people buy her work, then she could stop doing other jobs to keep herself in income, you see. And when she could just be a full-time artist being paid to be that, then we have a magic moment where, and that's going to happen soon, Eva. We're going to get you out of any other those brilliant jobs you do with the music business and other things, and get you all to ourselves, you know. So that, you know, it's difficult being an artist and working with digital media. Everyone assumes there's big money lying around with the art, with video and digital. It's almost like the opposite, but it means we have to keep pushing forward and putting our best foot forward is what I keep trying to do. I mean, I'll say that probably again and again if driven to it.
All these memories about all of us having met for the first time during a dinner, by being together, by being with a mutual friend who introduces us to each other, and having a glass of wine or whatever, or a bite together, and getting to know each other, makes me very nostalgic. And actually my next question was for both of you, and it has to do about how does the COVID situation has affected your working process. Because David, I remember you just saying that I work in the digital, but most of my work is happening in the physical world by going and meeting people. And you, Eva, probably, I guess, more or less is the same, because even if you work digitally, then you have to meet the sculpture and how you will print your work and how you will bring it to the physical world. So Eva,
Yeah.
let's start from you. How does the COVID situation and the pandemic has changed your work or the way that you work nowadays?
Well, on the one hand, I think it hasn't changed dramatically, at least compared with other people's daily activities in life. Since my main tools are coming from the digital realm, but of course, it has affected my work in terms of content. I guess when the context in which you create the work changes, the process inevitably and the work itself sometimes changes as well. But personally, I feel very open to this kind of changes, and I think we need to be flexible in order to to keep going. Of course, as you mentioned, Stamatia, there are some specific aspects that are very difficult to approach now, like when you have to do studio work or collaborate with other technicians and practitioners. And this is something that I do, for example, as well, when I'm trying to make the transition from the digital to the physical world into actual objects. This is something that becomes quite difficult. But I guess again, it is a matter of flexibility and adaptability between, I mean, these two ecosystems. It's like we need both ecosystems need to adapt themselves in order to somehow to survive and keep moving forward. And so, as artists or you as curators and
So David, with you, uh, besides asking about how you personally have changed the ways of working, another question that I think would be interesting to hear is how does the perception of the audience, how does the audience's perception towards your work, towards data, has changed after COVID, after the
Um,
advent of the pandemic?
it's difficult to gauge. I don't really quiz an audience because it's a bit like we're growing an audience, which is kind of interesting. I've made a sort of more concerted effort. I used to be very interested in just having a very small desired audience who wants to be looking at video, and now I'm trying to expand on that because I just feel like we have so much great work online. Just to go back to your first question to Eva and myself, with COVID, we launched galleries at Daata, which was an initiative because it's just what could we do that would immediately be able to help the art world. We can't commission lots of artists. We didn't have a deep budget to do that, and we'd already commissioned quite a bit of work in the last year. So we started galleries at Daata, which took a lot of technical resource for a first month, and then we had that set up. So now we have over 40, 45, maybe 50 galleries at Daata from all over the world, and that's growing. And in that process too, we developed the Daata Fair. Both sound grandiose, like they're these big things, but they felt like natural extensions, things we'd been thinking about for many years. But obviously the daytime workload before COVID was just, we were commissioning artists, showing them, and really we weren't a gallery, but our interest was really just commissioning and showing artists that we had worked with. In the absence of a commissioning budget, really, we kind of felt that we had the website and we could do what we do well for artists by showing galleries artists. And then I realized that we needed to really find ways of drawing audience to come online at specific moments like art fairs do, because as you know, this Art Athina galvanizes people to come onto a website or into a city this week. Art Freeze and Art Basel have been doing it brilliantly, and now they're all going online. So I thought, if they're going onto my platform of being online, I should use the word fair at the end of my word, so I can do what they do by getting audiences to understand there's a marketplace, there's a commodity, there's a value chain, and it elicits an audience to come online in the same way that Freeze, Art Basel, Art Athena, all sorts of other art fairs work. I mean, we're not trying to be anything other than what we've done for the last 6 or more years. So we just show video, and so we haven't changed what we do. We're just sort of changing how, we're adding to our perception. We're still working with artists. We just launched a new artwork last week by the LA-based artist Truly Hall that we've commissioned. And we're doing projects all the time. It's just things take a different timeline now with COVID, and people's times have changed. People are more fearful, nervous, not so easy to commission as it maybe was, because artists are sort of having to find ways of earning money in different ways at the moment. So we're trying to find that we're doing the best thing we could possibly do to be a platform that can support others, and projects are evolving. And we're planning the next fair coming up in about just over a month at Daata Fair Miami, and that we're going to work again like we did last year, and included Eva with the Bass Museum and the New World Symphony there. And that's a plan in just, it's happening. It's just, and then we're going to maybe commission a couple of new artists because of that. So the fair is giving us a new impetus to commission artists.
It will happen virtually and physically.
That's the sort of aim. I always like to try and find ways, even when we work together physically in Athens, I like to be there to communicate with the local community. I mean, I think the international nature of art fairs, we have to find ways of internationalizing ourselves. On galleries at Daata, I, was working to work with a lot of galleries of Brazil and South America and India and China and all sorts of places. So, it's trying to find, you work with galleries in areas that maybe aren't always at the same art fairs that we go to, even though few of them are, to try and think of areas I don't know that well, but to think about the galleries who are good in those regions and talk with them, talk with people who know them well, and work to find a way of showing their work, because being online means you can work wherever, but giving it a name and a place gives it some kind of physical, it gives it a sort of a sense of being, like I feel like right now I'm in Athens, but I'm in London right now, there's a kind of connection to a place. So when I made a post today, the lead image was Bill Velasquez's image of the Acropolis. For me, it makes me feel very romantic towards a place. When I do projects in Miami, I try and think about the venues there and the audience that's there. It's always how I've worked. It's not to sort of feel like you're going in with this sort of some other super knowledge of some other world. It's like you go in to join in to the world you're showing work in.
Actually, I have a question that relates to that for you, David, and it is: do you curate differently because you've been curating video so many years for Art Basel? First time I saw your videos was by lying down in the beanie bags or the parking lot in South Beach in Miami at night, and it was a unique experience. And you still curate also for the digital. And my question is, as a curator of video art, what are the parameters that you have in mind different, whether you will show something in an installation that involves also a seating arrangement and for people to be there, or it is the same when you have to do something, let's say, to curate a compilation for an online platform like Athina?
Probably the physical ones, somehow I can picture an audience. I mean, it's sort of slightly different how I think than your question suggests. I mean, I had to learn a sort of moral and legal process working with the public spaces in Miami, because I was showing the films on a 7,500 square foot screen outside the New World Symphony Center in a place called Soundscape Park, which is open to anyone in Miami, from the local homeless residents there to, you know, wealthy philanthropists, to young families with children. The mix was very broad of who might be sitting outside there, because it was free for all. And the city of Miami Beach is, even though you might think of Miami as quite a sort of, you know, liberal and, you know, sort of, you know, free sexual politics and everything goes, it was quite restricted on making sure that I couldn't suddenly show sort of things with sexual innuendo. Well, innuendo's okay, but overt sexuality, nudity, overt politics, overt religion. So I sort of had to think about what I curated that didn't include things that may offend people. Not that it could offend someone, but it's like, that's not how I think anyway. I don't think to show works to offend or to throw something into somebody's face to say, I know better than you. But I always work to try and best show what the artists want to show. But I had parameters, I guess, which is what I'm trying to say. And the parameters became quite useful because they meant that I made decisions on them. And I did find ways to show things that were sexy, had some kind of political sense of them. They could have religion in them. I once had a project with Christian Yankowski, and it was called Casting Jesus. And the city of Miami Beach got very nervous about the title, and they were thinking it's going to, we think this is going to offend all the Christians in the city. I said, I've actually got a letter from the Pope's office that Christian has to share with us, as they're very happy for us to show the work, because he was actually working with the Vatican on a project that was called Casting Jesus. It wasn't actually a problem to the Vatican. And I thought, if I had this letter from, I call it the Pope, I felt very good. I felt very excited to be able to show that to anyone. I didn't have to show it to anyone. I just told them. But I had to cut out once from an artist's work. Dara Friedman had this beautiful work called Dancing, and there was a woman in it who was dancing naked, and yet she was just very beautiful ballet dancer. And then that had to be cut out to make the film play. But there was somebody with a bikini on, and you could see through the bikini, and that didn't matter. Like, that was allowed to stay in. It was like the bikini was okay, even though it was hypersexual. Yet the naked body was offensive, yet it wasn't that sexual. So it's kind of, those things could upset me, but I've learned you have to sometimes work with parameters. And then within the fair itself, there were no boundaries. And, you know, I don't really, I try and think more since doing that. I do think a bit more about the audience and where you're doing it and how you may engage audience. Because I have shown some films that might kill people because they're so boring. And even though I love boring myself, you know, and I can be totally boring as a human, sometimes keeping people watching things has to be engaging. And even if it's meant to be boring, you have to present it that people are going to want to sit there. I showed a 12-hour film by, my brain's gone, it'll come back to me, Icelandic artist, Ragnar Kjartansson, just a brilliant artist. And it was a 12-hour film called Bliss, I believe. And it was a repetition of the last act of Marriage of Figaro, repeated as a performance that was done with performer originally. And as a film, it's sort of, as a concept, it just seems totally like it'll go kill you, but you become part of the film by even watching it. You just get drawn in to a sort of mesmeric trance, and you watch like the actors, the music, the opera singers throughout the 12 hours, almost like becoming other throughout the whole process. So it had its own power. And it was amazing. At the beginning, you had all these like really big, important highfalutin art collectors and art world players, and in the morning you had sort of lovers and homeless people sitting in the bean bags, and it was like I was so kind of almost entranced by the different shifts of audience through the night. And then I heard these two guys who had nowhere else to go speaking to each other. I was sitting behind them and I just heard them say, "That's the music mother played me as a child." And I just thought, that's amazing, you know, when you just have those moments of, you know, I've been watching a 12-hour film and suddenly there's some people watching it that has a connection to their childhood, and they, you know, just, you know, sometimes you have moments like that. I couldn't tell you, I'm not very curatorial in my approach. I'm more, I don't I try and find ways to show things as opposed to trying to show my way of showing things. So it sounds quite, maybe not so clear what that means, but I've always tried to find the best way to promote a project, because it's not always easy getting audience to look at video. And so it's trying to find a way of making audience feel that they can come, watch, partake, be supportive to the project, as well as making the artists feel good about their work being shown. And when I've done things in cinemas, often I've had outside their name in lights, and I've often had some kind of quite major artists come up to me going, "I've never had my names in lights. It's like fantastic." You know, the idea of having your name outside a cinema is, I mean, one day I'll have mine and then I'll retire then. Yeah.
Your son will soon, though. Anyway.
I hope so. Yeah.
And let's hear the same story from the creator's perspective. So, you, Eva, when you're making video art, do you have in mind how it will be exhibited? And does the work become different if it's about to stay online or to be shown as a part of an installation in the physical world?
To a certain extent, yes. I can envision somehow while I'm working how the work should be exhibited or shown. Of course, this can change and take many forms in my head as I proceed and during the creative process. But usually I have a more generic idea or an ambience that I want the work to follow. If the work resides in an online habitat, of course, it's something totally different. And I I remember as well watching, for example, the work of Ragnar David at the Metropolitan Museum in New York last year. And he had this amazing 360 installation. And as David was speaking now, I was trying to imagine how this work could actually be transferred into a digital, into a digital form. And the experience would be totally different, first of all. I mean, we were there, like our bodies were there, and we would be able to rotate our heads, like, and our bodies following the camera, following the sound. So imagine that, having like a 360 bodily experience, trying to transfer it to a website, for example. It's a huge step, and there will be huge gaps between this transition. Um, Despite that thing, uh, I think that if the work is being made uh, in order to stay online, it definitely needs a different preparation. And I, as an artist as well, need to approach the work in a whole different manner as well. The materiality of the work becomes different when you're watching something in a very close proximity. I mean, when you are able to even to like your eyes become a different mechanism that perceives the work in a very specific way. On the digital realm, I mean, we have screens, we have pixels, we have a totally different way of perceiving definition, and I think for me as an artist, it is super important to know beforehand how, uh, what are the means that I can have, and what kind of space I can use, and what kind of infrastructure I can take advantage of in order to achieve the highest quality of work. Uh, and that changes completely now. I mean, with this shift to the digital, it needs a lot more work than we would imagine. I think before the pandemic situation.
I always have you video artists as like the indigenous people of the digital world. And actually, from what you say, I get to understand that you started like reevaluating your work, not only uh, technical wise, technology wise, but also concept wise.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you know, how do you perceive actually the general term to the digital right now, as a person who was there from before?
Uh, I find it quite intriguing because like it happened because there was no other way right now. And I always like to observe these kind of situations and how they shift when you have no other choice, basically. So you are forced to adapt. And of course, this has a lot of negative aspects, but has a lot of positive as well. I think it feels right now like a good time to test our reflexes and our adaptive like capacity, and maybe the turn to digital, because it happened under these terms that we are all aware of. Uh, it hasn't happened, of course, in the most effective way, but I believe it's quite a crucial timing right now to expand our limits and understand that we are on the threshold of a new combined situation that will exist, and it will
Do
become a
you
new like reality.
do you believe the fact that this whole change was sudden somehow? Um, the platform or the digital platforms, maybe let's talk specifically about art, were not maybe ready to sustain all of, I mean, everyone going online right now because there's just no other option, for example.
Yeah, I think they weren't ready. Of course, they weren't ready. I mean, and we can. Uh, it's the intentions are one thing, and like you can have something on the back of your hand of your head, and if you're forced to do it in a random time and moment, in the timeline and in history, you are just unprepared. Um, I think that they were unprepared for sure, because the first results show us that we had some sudden random results, but they were also quite fast into grasping how things should be from now on. And at least we see now some good attempts um, that try to incorporate even physical artworks and physical mentality somehow into a better working digital counterpart.
And you, David, do you think that the audience's expectations towards digital art, and not digital art actually, experiencing art digitally, I would say, need to change in order to get the most out of it?
It's going to be happening because there's not many options, and we are able to do that. I don't believe in the digital superseding the physical as a good option. I believe it only makes sense because it's where it's needed, and where, like with video, with digital medium, that's what I've worked with for so long. It's its natural home, but not with ceramics or with certain types of two-dimensional and three-dimensional artworks. They're just photographs of them. Their effect is their physicality, and I don't want them to be replicated. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's only about a marketplace where it's replicated as an image. It's not replicated as a sort of experience of this and seeing some fake chair sitting next to it to get a sense of scale. It's not interesting to me. It just has no bearing on my interest levels. It's like, it's good. I want Frieze and Art Basel and other art fairs and Art Athena to succeed, because our world needs to succeed so that we all succeed. A failure in any one platform, in any one gallery, in any one, is not good for anyone else. Everyone's success is important to me. However, I think, I'm also concerned that, it's a fad right now. It's a fad, and we need to make sure that we're not just making it a fad, that we actually serve that this happens beyond a lockdown mentality, that we can actually do these projects like we're doing now. And maybe it's better that we don't all have to travel around the world to do a talk like this. I like being there too, because you could see the eyeballs of people in an audience. But also it is, I think our traveling, we all did travel too much in the art world, to just go from art fair to art fair and project to project. So it's, yeah.
Also
I think
sorry to interrupt, for the FOMO feeling, the fear of missing out. I didn't go to that fair, so I missed maybe what they were showing or what was happening or the projects. I think that for FOMO reasons, maybe being able to catch up online is also something that helps a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a silver lining in all this, and it's not to say it's a good time, but I think we have to look for positive processes. I think what we're doing is positive. What art fairs are doing, they're making sure they happen in some way. What I'm trying to do, I'm not suggesting it's going to make world peace and it's going to alleviate hunger and poverty, but at least it's trying to serve the thing that I set out to do of supporting artists in some way. And we're still having to figure things out, because technology isn't easy. Technology doesn't always work, and it's a sort of mythology that technologies are the answer to our prayers. It's really wonderful. It's a great thing, but for me, it's always been a means to an end. It's not like the end game, and it's not what I aspire to as a human, to be able to sort of sit on a Zoom call or use my phone. I use my phone and I'm on it all the time, but I would rather be on it less, and I just don't know how to do that, because my working life is dependent on it and I get hooked in it. I guess I used to smoke a lot too, so maybe I'm just addicted to something. But it's, how do you, I would rather find solutions to being physical, solutions to getting together and finding ways to, but that isn't possible right now. So this is I think outcomes are happening, and we are all, I think we all have to keep trying. That's kind of the other part, and it's not easy. Everyone's very scared and fearful and anxious at the moment. So, you're having to kind of work with that, and there are political issues going on that people are anxious and worried about. And I think, trying people to try and be good and kind and supportive of each other, I think is the most important thing. But, everyone has their own levels of what's important. I'm starting to preach now, but I work tirelessly to do what I do with Daata. I haven't got too many options in terms of what else I can do, and I hope that some good comes from it, and that it actually has a way of showing artists' work. And within that work, there's often messages of what the artist is trying to convey is really important about how they see the world. I'm not adding to that by trying to say what my views are of the world, and I try and have their voices speak loud and clear.
I sometimes trying to build Art Athena virtual. I was thinking about you, and I was saying to myself, this is just a lucky guy. He was there before, and he had all of this platform already made, and he tested and he's done everything, and now he just opens another category and he did the online fair. Everything was already there. He had already cooked the food, for the one that we're trying to make now in like 3 months, and these things are not so easy to
They're
happen
not
in
easy.
such a short time.
They're not easy. No, and every time I do something new, I upset the people who've been working with me so well, our web designers and developers, because they thought we'd arrived at the end game, and there's always a way of progressing and new things come up. And you have to keep thinking of how do you attract audience, how do you target support artists, sales, and the world changes around you, so you have to be nimble and able to adapt. I'm pretty good at being able to, at a moment of crisis, I'm pretty good. In normal days, I'm not so good. So, these moments, I kind of try, my brain probably thinks a bit differently right now. And how do you sustain what you're doing to keep going and to find outlets for galleries, for other art fairs, for projects like this? I'm a collaborator too, so trying to find solutions is important. And you can't answer to everyone and you don't help everyone, but you can try and do what you do best. I guess we were really focused on just sticking to what we do with video, not trying to show objects, not trying to show other forms of digital media that we can't show easily. I'm getting inundated with more requests. I can't do those now. It's not easy to be everything for everybody. You have to just, and then you're going to fail too much. It's okay to fail somewhat, but at least I'd rather fail in the thing I'm attempting to do than with things I don't understand.
I have actually a last question that has a lot to do with it, and maybe then I'll leave it some time if you have a question for each other, and then we proceed with if there's going to be a Q&A if any of the attendees have any questions. So Eva, what would you say to someone who's now relied to experience art online? For example, something that we do discuss before, and I would always say about the website here about Art Athina Virtual is, do not expect to have the same experience. Do not expect to have the experience of an artwork just through scrolling online and seeing it online. This is a totally different story. This is a totally different artistic programming that had to be made so that it could fit the digital. And basically, I think that there is this gap that when we see something, we're thinking about it. And if we see, for example, a painting online, we will miss something. And when we're trying to make up this piece that we miss by ourselves, I think that this is very important, the gap that we're trying to fill with our imagination. What do you believe about it? And what would you say to someone who is now relied to experience art online, even if it's digital art?
Yeah, first of all, and continuing what you were discussing before, as David said as well, we shouldn't expect the digital to just become the god, and the solution to everything. Just because now we were forced somehow into this new condition. I think we owe it to ourselves, first of all, to become more flexible and expand our limits and views in order to be able to grasp not only the things that are seen on the digital realm right now, but also the ones that cannot be seen directly. I mean, we need to be able to fill the gaps, and I totally agree with what you just said as well. I also believe that these gray zones, the in-between zones, where the meaning and the representational norms get challenged, are very intriguing. And right now, I mean, we don't have to feel the agony of getting the same exact result, because these two conditions pose totally different questions to the viewer as well. I would say to be open and to be adaptive, and to be flexible. And I guess we are the ones. Sometimes we are the ones that need to go towards a new direction, and it would be a huge trap for us to, as viewers and as users as well, because we inhabit this digital ecosystem. Even, you know, even if it's not related to art, we are living in this parallel um, path and universe. And I think it would be a huge trap to wait for the opposite while we rest somehow on a predefined role that the physical or digital has set for us. Uh, what I'm trying to say is that we just need to activate our own perceptive system and make it adaptable. And our bodies and minds need to become more adaptable at the same time.
Do you agree, David?
Yeah, I do. I'm not quite sure if I can add anything to that. Maybe you have another aspect you want to ask of me, or that was pretty wonderful.
I'm just happy that you agree and you share the same opinion. Do you
Yeah.
have any questions for each other?
Not really. I'm very fond of Eva's work, and I can say nice things about her work and about her. But I mean, yeah, no, we're all here in a sort of, you know, in a kind of nice bubble, a Zoom bubble that we kind of have a fondness for each other anyway, and that's kind of, you know, it's a you know, that is a nice feeling. I think you know, one of the things I'm often trying to say when I'm talking, not to you, but to audiences who somehow think there's some magic tricks going on behind the scenes, is that we all need to make an effort. If it's like the support of artists is not an easy one. Being an artist is really difficult, but supporting artists isn't just about buying their work and paying money to do things with it. It's also about looking at it and caring about it and finding ways to help the artist by sharing about the work, talking about it, communicating about it, as well as the financial parts. But people think somehow, I think with the digital, often people think there's some weird kind of financial model lurking around it, and it's only there in the very extreme. It's very unusual to have that. So artists making work often have to do other jobs, and right now those other jobs are very hard to find. So it's really the people who want to look at that work have to find ways to make more effort to watch it and to engage with it and to talk about it and to get their peers and friends and allies to do stuff with it. It's not just always like pop music and Hollywood film and the sport events. It's a very small audience that looks at it, and I think that's what I've always tried to say is that we all need to try harder, because it's the idea of working to look at, you know, working to support artists is not just it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens to try and build a community around it, but it's sort of the message that comes from it. All the other worlds often use artists' work in their work. You know, Hollywood, the pop world, the music world, they end up tapping their ideas and resources coming from what artists develop, and that's often forgotten in even like these lockdown economies where people are looking to support how, you know, bankers are surviving and how industry and finance can survive. Well, actually, those creative visions are the ones that make us feel something in our soul and hearts and give us thoughts in our heads. And that's often forgotten in the economy of how we are and how do we fund that. And a lot of that has big commercial economies. You know, if I was with you in Athens, there would be a lot of people flying in to spend money in Athens right now, and that's a very big deal for local economies as well. So that's what I mean by trying to find ways. There's not one answer, but there's ways of communicating about the work that draws a bigger audience, because if there's a big audience, there's more outcomes, and that's what I'm sort of trying to get at. You know, it's, you know, with pop music, you have a big audience, you have merchandise, and you have ticket sales for things, you know, so you start building up repertoires around the bigger audiences for things. The art world has been notoriously small for so many years, except for those phenomenal art fair periods like Art Basel in Miami and Frieze in New York, London. They build a big audience, but that's unusual. So we all have to work very hard, is my sentiment, and communicate and think, how do we support the artist first and foremost?
Everything starts from that, from this piece of art, from this artwork that we all want to show, feature, host, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being part of it, and for being part of Athina Virtual in general, and for saying yes and agreeing to have this discussion together today. It was very nice seeing you again, even through Zoom. Do we have any questions? Right now our chat is empty, so there are no questions. No more questions for you. Thank you so much for being here again, and can't wait to see you soon. I hope
thank you so much
somewhere.
yeah, obviously, but they're lovely. Well done with the fair. It's a brilliant thing.
Thank you, David.
And thank you.
Thank you.